Hey guys, Hanson here from SureGrip Hand Controls. We made this video for you to show you how to install our hand controls in a UTV. Now, we have lots of specific kits for UTVs, but if we do not have one for an application that you're looking at or thinking to purchase, you can use this video to assess the vehicle itself and decide if you're ready to take on the install.
Hey guys, Brad here from SureGrip Hand Controls, here to talk about our universal mounting kit for UTVs. This video is going to be a training video directed at helping you figure out how we're going to do hand controls in any given UTV, be it this Viking or something else completely different on the market. Now, the way we're going to do this video is we're going to talk about assessment, so take a look at the vehicle that you own and how we're going to approach it, how we're going to approach mounting. So we'll talk specifically about mounting and mounting the clamping block and the support rod. And then after we're done talking about mounting, we're going to talk about how to install each specific part step by step so that there's no doubt in your mind about how you're putting the system in. And after that, we'll talk about some tips and tricks on how we're going to get this thing out on the trails. Anyway, let's do this. So first thing we got to look at in assessment is under the dash. So on the inside of your vehicle, what does it look like? Because sometimes you're going to have open dashes where you can work with a lot of stuff. In this case, we actually have a closed dash, so there's plastic everywhere. In certain scenarios that we'll look at later, you may be able to take a look at something and actually attach to that. So in this case, we know that we're going to have to do some sort of modification to the dash because the support rod has to come out somewhere. Your controls are going to sit somewhere right under the wheel here, so the support rod has to come up underneath here. So obviously we can't actually attach anything right now here because we have access to nothing. So we're going to go look at somewhere else. So next thing you might want to do is take a look under the hood. Now in this case, once you removed the two knobs that hold on the hood, I got under here and realized that there's a whole mess under here. Sometimes what you'll see, again, is a lot more open space and maybe something to hook to, but in this case, that's not the case. But again, this is a step-by-step order, so sometimes you're going to run into issues with one or two of your first assessments. So the next place we're going to do is actually right under the wheel well. So let's get a look at the wheel well. Alright, so the third spot we're going to check is under the wheel well. So we can get a good view of everything that's under there. We've got two parts of the framing that you could look at. There's some round stock here, but there's some square framing up here that we're actually going to use. If you were to use the round stock down here, it'd be easier to clamp onto, but it's way too far away. You got to consider your support rod when you're doing these installations. So I will get a close-up of this so you can take a look, but we actually just attached right to the square framing really close to the steering column, so that way we can get out and we can get as close to the steering wheel with our support rod as possible. So let's go take a look at a few more vehicles and try out a couple more assessments.
Hey, Hanson here from SureGrip, here to show you another vehicle assessment. This one is a Polaris RZR 900. With these RZRs, the underdash is really open. Super easy for you to get up underneath, see what's going on. So let's get a close-up. As you can see, this RZR has a lot of structure under the column. We found it easiest to sandwich the clamping block to some bracing that already had some holes in it. Let's take a look at something else. Hey guys, here in a Polaris 570 Ranger. As you can see, unlike our other Polaris models, this dash is fully enclosed. No good spot to get up underneath and take a look, so let's head over to the hood. So this one, there's loads of room under the hood. Easy to see everything, the whole thing flips up. Usually you don't get this lucky. There's loads of structure to clamp your block to, maybe drill some holes, millions of options. So let's take a look what we did. In the Ranger, we took the same approach as the RZR. There's some material on the column that we could sandwich between the clamping block and the retaining block. Now, on to the next one. Now we're here in a Can-Am Commander. Same platform as your Mavericks. Another one of those vehicles has a really open dash. Super easy to get in, see what's going on. So let's take a closer look. Under the dash, there's some round stock that you can attach to. In these cases, it's easiest to use our clamp-on bracket. Let's take a look at another one. So we moved on to a Can-Am Defender. This is another vehicle with a really open dash. There's loads of structure underneath this thing. You can get at it easy. It's an awesome example where you don't always need a bracket. You can actually mount your clamping block to the structure underneath by drilling easy access on the backside, throw some bolts on it, you're good to go. Now remember, mount it where it's easiest for you. Not every vehicle is going to be the same.
Alright, so now that we're done our assessment, the next thing that we need to do is make sure that our clamping block is where we want it. So we in this case, used the clamp-on bracket, and we've tightened it down on the other side of the vehicle. But so the clamping block is where it needs to be, but we need to get through to the other side. So what we did is drilled a hole, and we have this stable on the other side so that we can mount the support rod. So the support rod will actually go through, and on the other side we will have a close-up of our rod going in through the clamping block, but you have to make sure it's going through the dash and into the hole on the clamping block, and then you're going to tighten that down. But the next thing that we're going to need to do is figure out where our controls are going to go and where it's going to sit on the support rod. So that's what we're going to do next. So as you can see, the support rod is up in the clamp-on bracket and dropping down through the other side. So let's go see what we did with the support rod on the other side. So if I take you around, and as you can see on the other side, we've come through the dash and we've actually taken the support rod and come up and followed the column. Now, one thing that you don't have in the kit but you can rent from us is what's called a bender. So let's take a second to talk about the bender.
So we're here with our bender. This is what you're going to need to really dial in those installs. You can purchase it from us, you can rent it. We use it to bend the gas and brake tubes, to give them really nice bends. It has dies on the side to really make them look good. We also use it to bend these support rods. So what we're going to do here is bend your support rod. First step is to measure where you're going to bend it. Mark it with a paint marker or something that you can see easily, and then put your mark at this point on your bender. Now, when bending the support rod, it's best not to do it all in one bend. As you can see here, we marked it, took it out, did a little bend, and it's still not quite fitting, so we're going to bend it a little bit more. So we're just going to put this here, we're going to line up our mark, and then crank down on this. Make sure everything's still lining up. Some pressure. Take this end. Turn this down to release your rod. Pull it out. Go see if it fits. So another thing we can do with our bender is bend our gas tube. Sometimes these contact your knee, and it's nice to put an arch on them just to give you a little bit more leg room. So the easiest way to do this is to stand up on your bender itself on these pads. For demonstration, I'm just going to do it down here. You just slide it into these dies and just add some pressure to it. Just give a nice bend, nice gradual bend. You don't want to kink your tube. And now you have a bent gas tube.
So that's the bender. So we made a bend so that we could come closer to the column, but every kit comes in a way that you don't necessarily need to bend, but you are going to get a more ideal installation if you bend. So we're trying to get nice up and close under the column so we can get the control nice and close to the steering wheel. So as you can see, if we come around here and look, what you're trying to do is get the handle so that it is hiding a portion of the steering wheel so it can be on the same plane. We're going to talk about how we're going to adjust and make sure that our handle position stays the same, but this is what you're aiming for, is for your control to be just like this. Now, as you can see, the support rod comes out the dash, up around the column, and then the handle, again, is just about a hand's width away from the wheel. And when you look from the outside, looking in to the vehicle, the handle should hide a portion of the steering wheel. Alright, so now that we have our support rod where we want it, the next thing to do is to make sure that the hand control is sitting where you want. You don't want to solidify anything. If your control's not where you want it to be. So you should be able to sit there and see that it's tucked up as high as you can get it. Again, a bender is going to help you get it tucked up as much as possible. If you don't have anything available to you or you didn't rent anyone, you'll have to just find the most ideal position, and then from there we're going to slide the control onto the support rod, and we're going to take a 3/16 Allen key, and there's 2 set screws that are on the control tube of the support of the main body of the control. So the support tube that connects to the main body, there's 2 set screws right down there. So just make sure that you give them a good tightening, because they are a very crucial part of the installation. Without those tight, the control is going to flop. So make sure that those are nice and tight. The next step after we have the support rod done is to get the brake in place. So what we're going to do is the brake is actually pushed over towards the center of the vehicle, and we need to adjust for that. So we actually put a brake extension on our brake linkage so that we could push the brake over so it's a straighter shot towards the brake tab that's on the control. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these 2 blocks, the main brake bracket block and the retaining block that we have on there, and we're going to slide them around the pedal and sandwich it. So I'll get a close-up on that so you can see what that looks like. So as you can see, the brake rod is attached right to the pedal, clamping it with the big brake block and the small retaining block that we have right there. So it's tightened down and follows all the way up, connected to the brake tube all the way up to the control. So with the brake rod attached and the tube threaded on, what we can do now is decide where we're going to have our handle sit, as far as away from us or towards us. So the more you thread it on, the more it's going to pull the control down towards the dash. The more you thread it out, the more it's going to pull your control towards you. You want it, again, to kind of hide the steering wheel if you're looking in this way. So in this case, I've threaded it to this point. I will take a 7/16 wrench and a 1/2-inch socket and take my nut and attach. And then we'll move on to the gas. So while I'm showing this close-up, now that the linkage is actually attached to the pedal, we need to attach it to the top of the control. So the ball joint at the top of the gas rod is actually just going to slide onto the gas lever. And again, you can reference all this in the instructions. But then you're going to take the ball joint, slide it over the gas lever, and the control comes with a nylock nut. Now, when you're tightening that, you don't need to dial it all the way down. All you have to do is make sure that as you are tightening it onto the gas lever, that a few threads poke out. After that, it's doing its job. You don't need to lock down as much as possible. That's not necessary. All you need to do is just a few good turns until you can see the threading on the gas lever poking through. So once everything's attached, your gas lever is still going to flow freely, and that's when we need the collar. So let's get down there and actually do that. So the block is attached and is firmly holding onto the pedal arm. And what we need to do, this collar just comes up and rests against the bottom of the tube. You don't need to push up hard against it. It just needs to be resting gently against. And then we're going to take our 5/64 Allen key and just tighten up the set screw firmly so that it stays in place. And that way, the control stays up on its own. So with our linkages attached, the last thing we really need to do are our 2 final adjustments, which is this handle needs to be put in its final position. So what you need is a 9/16 wrench, and there's a lock. The lock nut that's at the end of the control, you're going to hold the control in position with your left hand, and with your right hand you're going to grab your wrench, and you're just going to tighten the end with your 9/16 wrench. Just make sure you get that firmly in place. And now, as you can see, your handle is exactly where you want it, and everything should work fairly well. Now, as you can see, there's one more adjustment, and you can see that there's slop, and it doesn't quite return the way we want it to. There's an internal spring in this called the tension spring, and there's a tension spring washer down here just by the brake tab. Again, you're going to need your 3/32 on the key, and you're just going to make sure that the set screw that's inside that washer is loose, and you're going to rotate it about a half, somewhere between a quarter and a half turn, down towards the floor in a clockwise motion looking in. And then retighten the set screw. So now the washer is set in a different spot with the set screw holding it in place. And what you'll see now is actually a lot more fluid, and it comes back to position better. And the reason for this is a lot of the pedals don't actually have enough spring tension to bring our controls back up completely on their own. So this internal spring just takes that last little bit out. So now it's going to feel really smooth, it's going to feel natural, and it's going to get the job done. So just keep in mind that this is supposed to be supplementary. Read through your instructions and tackle each part one by one. Again, get your mount where you need it, do an assessment, get the clamping block where it's supposed to be, and get your support rod up in there nice and tight. From there, we get our controls on, we get them tightened down, and then we worry about positioning a bit. And then from there, we start putting on our linkages and then do some final adjustments. So let's just move on to a few quick tips and tricks.
Tip number 1, bend your tubes and your support rod. Makes the install 10 times better. It also allows easier access in and out of the vehicle tube. Now, the easiest way to do this is with our bender. It's designed to do this. Now, if you have access to a set of acetylene torches or a bender, you can do that also. Tip number 2, make sure your stop pin is in the correct location when in the neutral position. This is your hand control. This is the top of the control. Make sure the stop pin is up against the top of the control when in neutral. If you do not do this, it can allow your control to rotate all the way around and make you fumble to get it in the proper position, or in worst case, make your gas stick. Third tip, make sure your steering wheel does not contact any portion of your controls, whether it be your handle or your main body. Some of these models, the steering wheel is either not perfectly round or there's plastics that hang underneath. So before you take it for a test drive, put your steering wheel lock to lock, make sure there is no interference. Be safe.
So that's it for our instructional video. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Remember, this is a supplemental video. We really do encourage you to take the time to read your instructions and follow them step by step as well. But if you have any questions at all, please feel free to give us a call. We love to help. We can communicate through email, we can and get some pictures going so that we can go back and forth, find out maybe what's going on. But at the end of the day, we want you to enjoy your ride, and we want you to get out there and have some fun. Thanks.